warm introduction, and I thank the National Civil Rights Museum to all religious leaders that are here today, to all elected officials, Mr. Mayor, to your lovely wife, to state representatives and senators, to community leaders, to business leaders, to visitors who have come to this city for this moment and this time. And perhaps most of all to the children. Because a nation is judged by how it treats its most precious resource, and that would be our children. Let me also first thank my Alpha brothers for, in a real sense, we all owe a great debt of gratitude to fraternity Alpha Phi Alpha. Why? Because in Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, in the midst of memorials to war and presidents, there's only one memorial that is dedicated to peace and justice and righteousness. And that memorial was pulled together, certainly by a lot of people, a lot of corporations, but it is my fraternity, the brothers of Alpha Phi Alpha. And so we all owe a great debt of gratitude, because when anyone comes from anywhere in the world to the United States on the Mall, there's now a memorial dedicated to peace. Now I'm going to do my best to remain as composed as I can this afternoon, because this is a challenge. To stand here at the spot that my father walked out of the room behind me and lost his life. My life and my mother's life and the lives of my siblings were changed forever because the loss of a parent can be transformative. But the fact of the matter, at the tender age of 10 years old, I didn't get to have adult conversations with my father. He did not see me graduate from high school or from his beloved Morehouse College. He didn't get to meet my wife and our daughter, and so many other things. But a great sacrifice occurred. For many years, I used to wonder, what is wrong with a society that chooses to remove someone who was only promoting love? And I remember my father saying, this was back in the middle 60s. Every day we'd see something on the news that was unimaginable. And he'd say, this is a sick nation. And when you are sick, you first have to acknowledge you're sick before medication can be administered to help correct the ills. Now, what we see today is sickness reflected over and over. 56 years later. And I reflect because Dad was killed this day. This is Thursday. 56 years ago, on this day at 6:01 p.m., just 30 or so minutes from now. But we lost our father, and my wife lost her husband. But I believe our nation gleaned an understanding of a mission and a movement. However, we hadn't learned yet. Because Dad told us we must learn nonviolence or we may face non-existence. Some in our society are moving in that direction. And the question is, what are we going to do? Because it's not about me or I, but it's what we do to advance the day when his dream can become real for all humankind. What he and my mother taught was that it only takes a few good human beings to bring about change. Yes, there was the Great March on Washington where over 250,000 people gathered for him to share his dream. And I might add, I have heard the I Have a Dream speech thousands of times, but I've only listened hundreds. You may say, what do you mean by that, Brother King? You see, we listen with our ears, but we hear with our heart. And if we can get people to open their hearts and hear not just that message, but embrace and engage, make it happen, we'll have a better nation and a better world for generations yet unborn. As we stand here this afternoon, and I'm often asked, well, what would your father be doing? And my answer is that had my father lived, we would be on a totally different trajectory. So we may have some issues to address, but they wouldn't be these. These have been repetitive. We keep going around and around. And that's so important. That's why it's critical to make sure we teach history. We call ourselves a democracy, but we don't operate in a democratic way fully. How do you allow in a nation that's supposed to be democratic the fact that we have lost total civility in the political space, and it is elevated to a hatred and a hostility and a hurt that is unacceptable? It's inhumane. Today in our world, there are over 33 wars going on. Not just Israelis and Palestinians. Not just Russians and Ukrainians. In the Congo, in the Sudan, and because ABC, CBS, and NBC and social media hadn't told you, we don't know about it. So, to kind of correlate this, and I'm not going to be long because we're getting closer to 6:01, and I'm not sure how I'm going to respond at that point. But what I wanted to come and say, as my wife has already enumerated so beautifully, that this nation must come together to live out the true promises of who it says it is. I remember Dad saying, be true to what you said on paper. And yet, there are glaring contradictions that occur each and every day. Now, I don't need to enumerate all the issues because we should all know them. But I will say, in the United States of America, which we call ourselves, oh, and by the way, we do not exemplify that. We could, but right now, we are not the United States of America. You know, it's just really perplexing to me how we can find money to fight wars. No matter where they are. We always find money for ammunition, but we can't provide clean water for people in the United States. Whenever there's a war, here we come. You know, you used to have that bugle, and send people to the front line to die. There's something wrong with that. We are not exhibiting the kind of behavior that we should. Again, in the United States, everybody should be able to have a decent job. This is the largest economy on planet Earth. Trillions of dollars. And we have the audacity to have poor people. And it's because we have not focused to address it. A strategic plan can address it. I don't mean just giving a person a fish. Yes, some of that we have to do. But we can create the community and climate so that people can take care of themselves and their families. Everybody in America should be able to have a decent job, a decent pay. Everybody should be able to have a decent home. A decent home could be the circumference of a little bit further than this little space right here. It doesn't have to be a 10,000 square foot home. Some may have that. But a decent home in the United States. We should be embarrassed as a nation that we still have levels of poverty. Everyone should be able to have the best education, not some schools having good and great educations and others being inferior. That's unacceptable. Everyone should be able to have health care. Greatest health care on the planet, greatest health systems, the greatest technology found here. But yet people can't afford to pay for it. Probably shouldn't be paying for it anyway. There's other ways to do it. And everyone should be able to have justice. We have a criminal system. It's not a criminal justice system. A criminal system that targets the least of these, poor folk. Our jails are full of black folk, 67 to 80%. Not just in Shelby County, by the way, but all over America. Latino and Hispanic brothers and sisters, and poor white folk. So unless we demand the system work, so that everyone has a fair opportunity to be treated with dignity and respect. By the way, all of what we're here for today came to fruition because of the mistreatment of sanitation workers who walked picket lines, who were working full-time hours for less than part-time pay. We owe those families a debt of gratitude. Amen. But Dad came and chose to engage with his voice in this unjust set of circumstances. So take a look at what corporate executives are making and how their pay continues to increase. When masses of people, they can't hardly make it. How food prices are going up instead of going down. Y'all remember, I was talking to my assistant a year or so, when the price of eggs went up. Things are supply and demand, right? And they went up significantly. But there wasn't no more chicken. It wasn't like there was a shortage of chicken. So it's greed. We are consumed with this greedy complex. I'm not suggesting everyone has to do this, but I was in an office one day with one of my father's lieutenants. He had a picture of Dad behind him, and he said, this man, and I'll tell you his name, though many of you would know this name, and that's Hosea Williams. And he was sitting in his office and started shedding tears, and he said, this man, he did a number of things. He conquered the love of wealth. that. When you are not concerned about, so consumed and concerned about wealth, and you aren't afraid to die, you are virtually unstoppable in your quest. That is what Martin Luther King Jr. represented. He was focused. He and his team were strategic. And he did all this in love. There was always room for people to dialogue in a civil way. And he didn't go counsel you because you had a different position. You know, you don't like what people say, we just counsel them now. That's very unfortunate that we're at that juncture in this nation that we call home. That also is called the United States of America, but yet not united. Now, I want to leave you with a challenge because I hope that we want to create a nation that delivers for our children, that delivers for our seniors, that delivers for our veterans. I'm sort of not with war, but those who have fought for our country, they should be lifted up. That's right. Not mistreated, dying on the streets. So our children must be taken care of. Our seniors must be. Our veterans must be. Those of us who are in between got to figure out how to make it. You see, Dad and his team, Mother and her team, and many others have shown us how to make America what it ought to be. See, Dad never used and talked about America is great, or even the phrase great again, because I personally just don't know when that period was. Not for my people. Not for the indigenous population that was here before any of us. When has America been great? Doesn't mean we can't become, but we're just not there yet. And so Dad talked about the America that should be and could be, and he did all that he could for his short life, 39 years, to create the climate for that to happen. So I ask you, as I get ready to close, what are you going to do? That's right. Are you going to be like a thermometer or a thermostat, he would say? Look at that analogy. Thermometer is a great device. It basically records the temperature. If it's, 70, it'll say 70. If it's 30, it'll say 30. But that's all it does all day long, is record the temperature. There's another device called a thermostat, and it regulates the temperature. And so in life, we must decide whether we're just going to record and go along to get along, or whether we're going to create the climate for change and justice and righteousness and peace. We as human beings can do that. History has shown us that time and time again. So it's not where you stand in times of comfort and convenience, Dad would say, but it's where you stand in times of challenge and controversy. On some questions, he said, the coward position is it safe? Expediency says, is it political? Vanity says, is it popular? But there's something deep inside all of us called conscience. Ask, is the position right? So we must take positions sometimes that are neither safe, nor popular, nor politic. But we must take those positions because our consciences tell us they're right. So I ask you this evening, what is right for you and right for America, for Americans of all walks of life to exist? Because this country came into being because a lot of people were working to make it what it is. But we're not finished. In fact, we're not even close to where we ought to be. We got to go back and beyond quadruple our efforts. I'm so inspired by generations younger, the younger generation, the generation of our daughter. And I must share this story. I believe I see Justin Pearson. Representative Pearson down. This brother and one of his other colleagues, I'm bringing this up because I don't understand your state legislature. How y'all allow people to run your government, and all they were doing was bringing an issue that their constituents, and they are concerned about, but their constituents were raising. They weren't just raising something by the side of the road, and it was about safety. It was about our nation moving forward. And you get thrown out of the body by somebody who, I don't even know what the people are thinking. I understand guns. I should be the first one to want to have a gun. That's right. My dad stood right here talking to someone and was gunned down. So, sure, I should be like, well, let me get a gun and go shoot somebody who did that. Because, certainly, you all believe that an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth works, right? We believe that, right? But think about it. If that philosophy worked, most of us would be without eyes and teeth. There's got to be a higher level that humanity moves to. And that's what Martin Luther King Jr. taught us. That's what other young people, Mr. Representative, are representing. That's what my daughter represents. I got to say this. I got to brag before I leave. 2016, we were invited to the White House, the last year of President Obama. And we said to our daughter, Andrea, and I said, Yolanda, you got to come up with a question to ask the president. We didn't tell her anything else. She gets into the Oval Office. We were there because all the many times we'd gone in the almost 8 years the president had been there, we'd not been in the Oval Office to see the bust of Dad that is still displayed there and has been there since President Obama. But my point is, when she asked that question, the president gave her an answer, and it wasn't sufficient initially, but he kept talking, and she finally felt comfortable. Less than a year and a half later, Parkland, Florida occurred, where 17 people were killed by a young student who came to a school and just exhibited hatred and hostility and mental illness. About a year later, I'm sorry. The question was, Mr. President, what are you going to do about these guns? Think about that. This is 2016. 2017, Parkland occurs. And then 2018, the March for Our Lives, where over 800,000 people assembled in Washington, D.C. A lot of students from Parkland, but students from Chicago. Those young people brought together students from Los Angeles, students from Texas, students from New York, all saying, we got to do something about guns. So Yolanda we asked to speak. And she learned that morning, Saturday when it was, that she was going to speak. Very quickly, this is what she said. And she blew us away. She said, I'm Yolanda Renee King, granddaughter of Martin Luther King Jr. and Coretta Scott King. My grandfather had a dream that his 4 little children would live in a world where they would not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. She then said, I have a dream too. And my dream is enough is enough, and we must create a gun-free world. Doesn't mean that it will happen tomorrow. But until it's put into the universe, it can't begin to happen. It is now in the universe, and we will get there someday. I wish I could wave a magic wand and we were there today, but we're not. So as I close, we perhaps know what our challenge is. I must encourage us, please participate in the upcoming elections, not just in November, but every time there's an election. Dad told us a voteless people is a powerless people. And one of the most we can take is that short step to the ballot box. And when we do that, we also have to hold elected officials accountable. Because when you hold folk accountable, then you are able to engage them to build community. We must build community and not continue to build bombs that destroy life and humanity. So, do not get any ways tired, as the song says, because we've come much too far from where we started. But no one ever told any of us that our roads would be easy. But I know our God did not bring any of us this far to leave us. Thank you, Memphis. Thank you, Memphians. Thank you, all of those who come from around the world. Let's keep building the National Civil Rights Museum so that we know, appreciate, and promote the true history of this place called the United States of America. And one day, we'll be able to wear that badge.